fall of 2007, some of my teenage middle school students visited several rural elementary schools. The older kids guided the younger students through hands-on science activities, and the teenage students showed the elementary students technology projects that they can make when they get to the middle school. One of the technology projects middle school students can make is a working model of a hand. The hand model moves so realistically because it works like a real hand works.
Everybody, okay, pass it on so everyone can get a chance.
That's cool. My sister has that.
Did she? What's her name?
I got some.
Where are most of the muscles for our fingers? Not in our fingers. Not even in our hands, but past our wrists, in our forearms. The muscles in our forearms are attached to our fingers with strings, called tendons. One of my students showed me how we can make our relaxed fingers curl just by pressing on our forearms. It's kind of eerie.
And it makes your fingers curl.
Our muscles give our fingers the strength to hold the weight of the rest of our body. Yet because those muscles are tucked back out of the way of our fingers, we can create music and convey complex communication. Strength and dexterity. Powerful and nimble. We get both because our bulky muscles are out of the way, attached to our slender fingers with strings. I must warn you that the model hand is a challenging, messy project. It takes my middle school students a couple of hours, although projects are always slower the first time through. If it is an appreciation of our fingers that you're looking for, there's a quicker, easier working model finger project. It is essentially a notched drinking straw with a string taped on. You can find directions for it at sciencetoymaker.org in the Robot Hands section. Here's what you need to build the robot working model hand. Drinking straws come in an amazing variety of diameters. The pink straw is the thinnest of them all. These thin straws were from a dollar discount store. You need 5 thin, flexible straws. Here's some other things that you can buy at a building center or hardware store. You will need a cartridge of 100% silicone rubber sealant and a dispenser. Also get a medium-sized nail. It's the best way to keep the leftover silicone from drying out. Understand that the project will span at least 2 days because depending on how thickly you apply the silicone, it will take at least 24 hours to cure. You will also need string. I use nylon twine, sometimes called mason's twine. I like the braided kind a little better than the twisted if I can get it. Do not use kite string or dental floss or other thin string because that would cut into the fingers. And you will need a single-edge razor or X-Acto knife. It has to be really sharp, not some old blade lying around. Here are some things you will need that are probably around the house already. a sharp pair of scissors, and soap, either solid or liquid. You'll need a breakfast cereal box or similar cardboard. You should use a pattern for at least your first hand. You can print it out from sciencetoymaker.org in the Robot Hand section. Carefully cut out the hand on the outside solid line. It's a little challenging between the fingers. Give it your best. You need 5 pieces of twine, each piece 22 inches or 56 centimeters. Generally, we don't cut nylon twine with scissors, we melt it. If you don't, it frays. Alternately, you can tape the ends. Cut out one big side of a cereal box. The next part of making the hand involves applying the silicone. The silicone sealant does several things. It holds different parts of the hand together. Also, in our real hands, there are tendons in the back of our hands to straighten our fingers. But that gets complicated. In our simplified model, we'll use stretched silicone rubber to spring back and straighten the fingers. You will need to cut off the tip of the silicone cartridge before you can get anything out. Most dispensers have a built-in tip cutter. Notice, though, that I'm being pretty careful not to cut very much of the tip. You need a fine stream of silicone coming out of the nozzle to control it. So the closer you cut to the tip, the thinner the stream will be. Cut off enough to get a nail in, but no bigger. Don't forget that you have to puncture the foil seal the first time you use it. And all the dispensers have some way to relieve the pressure so the silicone doesn't keep oozing out. Make sure you know where that is and how to use it. Just before you use the silicone, apply a layer of soap to the print side of the piece of cardboard from the cereal box. The purpose of the soap is to keep the silicone from sticking to the cardboard. If it is liquid soap, don't add water. If using bar soap, use as little water as you can and still be able to spread it. Silicone releases acetic acid as it cures. Acetic acid is the common name for ordinary vinegar. When you get silicone on your hands, and I do mean when, not if, be careful that you do not rub your eyes because the acetic acid will burn. Silicone is not easy to get off your hands because it's not water soluble. I have found the best way to get silicone off is to rub my hands with a dry towel first, using lots of friction. Then wash with soap and warm water. We will start not on the front of the hand where the straws are, but on the back of the hand where the string is embedded and anchored in silicone. So flip the pattern over. Notice that on the dark table, you cannot really see the print through the pattern. But when you put a light-colored surface behind it, you can see through. Once you start dispensing the silicone, you cannot stop halfway through the operation. You're going to lay down double beads of silicone. Each bead should be about as thick as a pen or pencil. I know I just said that you need to be able to dispense a thin bead of silicone, but on the back of the hand, the silicone beads must be as thick as a pen or pencil, so advance slowly and pile up the silicone. Don't skimp. This layer of silicone will make the fingers spring back after bending. Of course, your hand will get tired, but notice that most of the fatigue is in your forearm, where the muscles for your fingers are, which is the whole point of the project, right? Starting at the wrist, you need to lay the string on the silicone, push the string in the silicone completely, and embed it as shown, kind of cover it up. You're anchoring the string in the silicone, so when people pull the string hard, it's not going to come out. Now pick up the cardboard and put the side with all the soap on it face down onto the silicone. Aim carefully. Gently tap all around so the cardboard makes contact with all the silicone and flattens the silicone slightly. Carefully flip the whole thing over. It might be a good idea to tap the paper down a little to flatten out the silicone, but stop when it starts to ooze out the side. Don't worry if a little squishes out. It's easy to trim later when it's hardened. Pull the straws so the bendy part stretches out. Pull the straws so the bendy part stretches out. Run one small bead of silicone along the middle of each finger. Note that this time it's just one bead and it's much thinner than before, just enough to make a straw stick. Before the beads of silicone have time to skin over, stick on 5 straws. Put the bendy part of the straw where indicated by the pattern. Push the straw down all along the length of the straw so it is right against the paper pattern. Some of the straw will stick out from the fingertips and the wrist. Don't do it now, but when the silicone is dry, you will be cutting them off. Notice that the thumb bends a lot at the bendy part of the straw, and a lot of the straw will stick out both ways. The next step may be the hardest. You will be using a motion I call weaving as you dispense the silicone over the straws. I think it's a good idea to practice weaving with part of a straw before you start on the real thing. Save it so you can practice notching later. Notice that the tip of the silicone cartridge spends most of its time at the side of the straw, and that is where most of the silicone goes, on the side, not on the top of the straw. I actually tap, tap, tap on each side. In addition to ensuring that I spend more time on the side of the straw, the tap, tap, tap pushes the silicone into the paper fibers so it really sticks. Also, notice that the angle that you hold the dispenser is pretty steep. So again, the silicone is really mashed against the pattern. where the straws get close to each other near the wrist. Do your best as you get the weave patterns to blend and merge the separate weaves into one. Weaving silicone on the thumb is similar to putting it on the fingers. Notice that there are two places on the thumb that need some additional reinforcement with silicone, or else the string is likely to rip out of the straws if pulled hard. These zigzag lines are where the extra silicone should go. The reinforcements are just beads of silicone that go higher than the silicone near it. You cannot do any more until the silicone cures, at least 24 hours, perhaps more, if it's thick or if weather conditions are bad. I talked to a chemist who told me that silicone actually reacts with the humidity in the air, so it cures better under humid conditions than dry. After the silicone has solidified, the first job is to cut off the straws that stick out of the fingers, thumb, and wrist. My students don't believe me when I issue dire warnings about how easy it is to accidentally cut off a string, until someone in the class cuts a string. We repair cut tendons by cutting and pulling out the old one, then pushing in and gluing a new one. I know a surgeon who repairs real tendons that have been cut in accidents. He sutures, which means stitches, them together and they reconnect, just like broken bones mend themselves eventually. Trim off any silicone that is oozed out over the edges of the fingers. Also, cut in between the fingers here, here, and here, only to the black line. This part of the model hand represents the webbed part of our real hands. We think of animals like ducks and frogs as having webbed extremities, but we have a webbed part. Can you see that there is a joint that bends here? Our fingers start there, right? But the fingers actually separate here. The distance between the joint and where the digits separate is covered with stretchy skin. Even silicone is not as stretchy as that, so we'll have to just cut it. A real hand has 3 joints we call knuckles on each finger. Our simplified model hand bends by cutting notches into the stiff straws. 3 black lines per finger indicate the location of the knuckles. This is the piece of straw I practiced on earlier. The paper is here. Let's imagine a line indicating the center of a knuckle is here. The razor blade will start cutting over here at about a 45-degree angle. The notch bottoms out over the line, but notice that it does not cut all the way through the straw. I find it easier to rotate the whole hand when I make the second cut of the notch. I wish there were a way to speed up cutting notches like this, but I find I just have to work slowly and carefully. What happens if you don't cut the notches wide enough? On this finger, I'm cutting the notches too narrowly. As a consequence, the finger does not bend as much as it should. Notice how this red pointer finger does not bend very much, while the other fingers do. When you look closely, you can see why. The width that you cut the notches determines how much that joint can flex. When this part hits this part, it cannot bend anymore. The green notch is wide, so it bends a lot. But the red notch is narrow, so it cannot bend very much. Only when I cut the notches wider does it have the full range of motion. Cut the notches for the thumb last. It's a little harder to cut in between the reinforcement. Make sure you cut the notches at the 3 straight lines, not the 2 zigzag lines where you put the reinforcement.